So here we are at the beginning of turn 4 in Geronimo. Still no Civil War. That puts us at 1866 already. The fifth player, who was in good shape with 32 victory points, third place. He gets the U.S. this turn. This doesn't look like it's going to be a huge turn for the U.S. Whatever, it might be a two-state turn, might be a couple tribes to go into submission, but last turn ended up very, very rich for the U.S. At 26 points. That's the biggest we've seen yet. So we'll see what turns out. It was tough picking Indian tribes at this point. There isn't a lot that has points for it. I mean, the Sioux obviously are humongous still, but other than that, you got the Comanche. The Kiowa aren't bad at 8 strength points with some leaders. The Arapaho are still pretty potent. Arizona is such a mess. Now, one of the things that we've seen in the game, or that I've seen many times and I'm seeing again, is it's very, very difficult to convince yourself to actually move one of your villages. You can't do it if there's a mission any more than you can go fighting. So usually, unless you have nothing near you that you can possibly gain points from, it's really not worth shifting a village to some other location. Maybe to avoid getting it killed, but usually it's better to cut a deal with the Americans to go on a reservation. Looked up a rules clarification. Actually, a rules correction. The rules actually say the U.S. player gives up victory points to tribes that go on reservation. That's not the case. The clarification from Berg says that he wants those to come out of nowhere. So both players win, kind of. And that could be quite a large pile of points you could give to someone to get 2 for yourself. Kind of a weird situation. But certainly when you had to give them up, it seemed really dumb. The best you'd give is 1. Anyway, here we are, ready to roll on this one. I don't think this is working very well in terms of catching the flavor of the game too much, but well, we'll continue with it anyway. After the first round, still no Civil War, not going to happen this turn. Has to happen on the first card play. Okay, so what happened? The Arapaho opened things up, grabbing 4 big points by schwacking that mine in Colorado. Again, this doesn't hurt the U.S. particularly. It is just a point gain mechanism, but points are what the game's about, so the Indians want to collect points. They don't particularly want to hurt the U.S. He's not in first place even. On to the second player of the turn, plays the Southern Paiute. Made an attempt to hit the Nevada mine and failed. The U.S. moved. The second player played the Mormon card, which forces the U.S. to watch the Mormons move into Utah. And that column that's been played in Utah is to do just that. And underneath it, it has a cute little bird to indicate the Mormons. And they also moved Custer, I think. Custer into Arizona. Set up somebody in Oregon. They're building up in Kansas. It's already got enough points for statehood. And defending it in Nebraska. They're really mostly worried about the Sioux, the Pawnee, the Kiowa over there. The Comanche. The Arapaho could be a problem as well. But most of the other tribes are fairly small at this point, and it's really kind of a case of, well, if you can knock them onto a reservation, that's great, but anything else isn't really a big deal. After that, the Pawnee played and killed a town in Kansas. Then the Shoshone went, took tribal medicine, hit the mine, and they're sticking around to hit a village because there just isn't that much to hit anymore. California, where the big points are, it's hard to reach. Now you might say, well, why don't you move a village over and then attack California? That might be worthwhile, especially with Oregon still not an unpleasant place to live. Nevada, Arizona, these are not places one can survive. So we'll see what happens. Somebody might choose to do that, but it always seems better to grab a point now or 2 points now than maybe take 2 turns to grab 4 points. I don't know. After the second round, we see the U.S. getting kind of harried everywhere. He's having difficulty getting traction. So over in Kansas, sees he only has 5 points left towards statehood there, where he was actually at the 8 before. Over in Minnesota, the Sioux have been beating up on U.S. forces. They're down below statehood value. Hoping to throw out a railroad track in there. Oregon's doing well, however. As long as they can maintain statehood, it looks safe. They brought the Texas Rangers in to whack the Comanches for a point. But otherwise, U.S. troops are actually facing forces in a lot of places that they're having difficulty with. Around the horn again, Minnesota's still a battleground. The Sioux in and out, just wrecking that Union column. The Union forces, well, what have they been trying to do? They've been trying to get their states and keep their states. Texas is still in danger with the Comanches sitting out there about ready to hit again. Kansas doesn't quite have enough points to go over. Minnesota's 1 point below it's needed. Oregon has made the points, but that's not an issue. Arizona, interesting stuff's happening here. Point-wise, it's still above what it needs to be, even with a massacre that occurred. The Ute came in to attack it, but we're seeing people coming on and off the reservation. The Yavapai, especially, who've been forced on, who've asked to be on reservation twice, and each time they gave the U.S. 2 points, and the U.S. lost a point each time they came off reservation due to agency corruption cards because they didn't get any victory points, so they got knocked off. That's bonus points for the U.S. Oh well. The U.S. isn't, the player playing the U.S. isn't doing that well. He's not doing horribly, but he's in like 3rd place before this, and this is being a rough turn, so it's not a big deal. Last round of this turn. All right, that's the end of the action rounds, and then the U.S. has made its statehood claims on Kansas, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, barely, and Oregon, and they kept all their states barely. Texas at 5, Minnesota at 8. Yep. Yeah, Colorado. No, Colorado's only at 9. They failed one. Oops. Well, that sucks. So they may not be generating states for Oregon and Kansas. They have to roll for that. They also lose victory points for Colorado. I didn't see that sucker. Sometimes you miss them. All right. We'll see what happens at the end of the turn. So the net effect at the end of the turn, the Pawnee ended up going on reservation in Nebraska. Kansas and Oregon both successfully became states, even though Colorado, they made their rolls. And the guy who would have been in the lead otherwise, the number 4 player over here, his Yavapai, after the indignity of going on and off reservation twice, the U.S. refused to allow them back on, so they died off. It's a very close game at the top right now. Our victory points sit at 45 for the first player, who was running the Pawnee this time, actually, and the Cheyenne and the Assiniboine. He didn't make a lot, but he was in the lead. Second player is down at 31, which is far enough away that that's painful. He also didn't make a lot. Third player made up a lot of ground. He doubled his score. He's up to 21. And this is one of the things, at this point, there are a couple of good tribes. So whichever Indian player gets the tribes that they can score the points with, in this case, he was playing the Arapaho Comanche, but the Sioux are also pretty strong, can score a decent amount of points. The other players who are Indians are going to have a lot of trouble, but the U.S. points are going to stay about the same, if not even increasing, because they can get points off killing Indians. Players 4 and 5 rounded out at 45, huge jump, and 47 for the U.S., another big, big jump. So it's pretty even. The U.S. player is going to suffer a penalty at some point because of the Civil War. That's got to happen, I think. Just by odds, unless I left the card out of the game. All right, that's it for this turn. On to turn 5.